All right, so get this. We're diving into quantum computing today. You've sent in some really interesting articles about Microsoft's goal to build a million-qubit quantum computer. It's a wild idea. Think about it. Harnessing the power of these things called topological qubits, it could revolutionize everything from how we fight plastic pollution to even how we design self-healing materials.
It's a pretty bold vision, and what I found really fascinating is that Microsoft isn't just trying to improve existing quantum computing technology. They're aiming to completely reinvent how it works with this topological core architecture.
So before we go too far, let's back up for a second and break down just what is quantum computing and why is a million qubits such a big deal? What are the core concepts that someone needs to know to really wrap their head around this?
Okay, so imagine a computer that can explore tons and tons of possibilities all at the same time. That's kind of the power of quantum computing. Instead of bits, which, those are just a 0 or a 1, you have these things called qubits. And they can be both 0 and D, 1 at the same time because of this thing called superposition. And because of that, quantum computers can work on problems that would be impossible for even the most powerful computers that we have today, like the normal ones.
Okay, so I'm starting to see why this is so revolutionary, but the articles also mention some limitations with the quantum computers we have now, like qubit stability and error rates. Is that where Microsoft's big innovation comes in?
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Current quantum computers are super sensitive to any kind of interference. It's almost like trying to write a message on the beach when the tide is coming in. The tiniest disturbance could erase everything. Microsoft is trying to change that with their topological qubit, which is powered by these really interesting things called Majorana particles.
Okay, so let's dig into that a little bit. So we're talking about the Majorana 1 chip, right? It's been called the transistor for the quantum age, which sounds like a really big deal. Can you tell us more about this breakthrough and how does it relate to these Majorana particles?
So Microsoft has created this brand new material. It's called a topoconductor. And this material can harness these Majorana fermions. They're these particles that have been theorized about for almost 100 years, but they've never really been seen until pretty recently. What's groundbreaking here is that they're using these particles to make qubits that are way more stable.
So these Majorana particles are like the key to getting past those error and stability issues that have been plaguing quantum computing. But how do they actually make these qubits less likely to have errors?
Okay, so think of it this way. You write a message in the sand. A single wave can come in and just erase it. But if you carve that same message into stone, it's going to stay there much longer. That's kind of what a topological qubit is like. The information isn't stored in just one single particle. It's stored in how the whole system is arranged, which makes it a lot more robust.
That's a really great way to visualize it.
Yeah.
And they've managed to put 8 of these topological qubits onto a single chip called the Majorana 1, which is apparently super tiny.
Yeah.
What's the process like to actually create these qubits?
It's an incredibly precise process.
Oh.
Imagine building something with single atoms. That's what they're doing. They use a really special combination of indium arsenide and aluminum. They carefully layer it atom by atom to manipulate those Majorana particles.
Yeah.
And that creates the environment that's needed for these really stable qubits.
Wow. It sounds like a really complex process. We're
Yeah.
talking about controlling matter at the atomic level, right?
Oh, exactly. It's really cutting-edge material science and nanofabrication. But this complexity actually gives them a major advantage. Microsoft's approach lets them control these topological qubits digitally.
Okay, I'm curious about this digital control aspect. What does that mean? And how is it different from other methods that are out there?
Think about the difference between an analog clock with its hands and a digital clock with its numbers. Digital control means that they can manage and scale these qubits much more efficiently and in a more reliable way than some of the analog methods that are used in other quantum computing approaches.
So they're bringing the reliability and controllability of the computers we use every day into the quantum world. But what does all of this actually mean for solving problems in the real world? We have this incredibly stable system that we can potentially scale up. What can we actually do with it?
This is where it gets really exciting. The potential applications are vast, and honestly, we're still discovering them all. But let's start with something I think you can relate to, microplastics. Imagine if we could break down these harmful pollutants into harmless stuff using some specially designed catalysts. That's the kind of power a million-qubit quantum computer could give us.
That's pretty incredible. And I remember reading about self-healing materials in one of the articles. How does quantum computing play into that?
If we can really understand how materials work at the quantum level, we could design materials that can repair themselves, just like living things do.
Yeah.
Think about bridges that never rust, or phone screens that fix their own cracks, or even self-healing human tissue. It's pretty mind-boggling.
So we're talking about a total shift in how we design and build things. It's not even just about making current materials better. It's about coming up with completely new materials with properties we can't even think of yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to one of the coolest ideas that Microsoft is putting forward. It's the idea of designing it right the first time.
Okay, designing it right the first time, that sounds almost too good to be true. We've always relied on trial and error, like building tons of prototypes and making changes as we go. How would that even work?
Imagine a really powerful quantum computer working with some really advanced artificial intelligence. The quantum computer can simulate and analyze materials at the atomic level with incredible accuracy. And the AI can then use that data to design new materials and molecules with specific properties that we want. So we don't need all that prototyping and guesswork. It's like having a whole team of expert chemists and engineers all working at the atomic level, guided by this incredibly powerful quantum computer.
Wow, that's a pretty amazing vision for the future of design and innovation. It's like we're moving from a world of let's try it and see to a world of like atomic level precision engineering. But before we get too carried away, let's take a closer look at the science behind these topological qubits. What exactly is topological order and why is it so important for stable quantum computing?
Imagine tying a knot in a rope. No matter how much you twist or turn the rope, that knot is going to stay there. That's kind of like topological order. It's a characteristic of a system that makes it really stable and resistant to change.
So it's like the knot is the information and the rope is the quantum system. That knot is what makes the information so hard to mess up, right?
That's a great way to think about it. With these topological qubits, the information is encoded in these really tough knots that are formed by the Majorana particles. And that's exactly why they're so promising for building a quantum computer that's actually stable.
That makes a lot of sense. But I'm wondering, how do they actually measure these Majorana particles? I mean, they're incredibly hard to detect, right?
You're right. They don't exist naturally. We can only make them show up under really specific conditions. But Microsoft has figured out this really innovative technique using microwaves to measure these particles with incredible accuracy.
So they had to come up with entirely new measurement techniques, basically pushing the boundaries of experimental physics just to be able to work with these particles. It sounds like an incredibly huge effort.
It really is. But they've not only been able to prove that these Majorana particles exist in their system, they've also shown that they can manipulate them in a reliable way for computation. It's a massive step towards building a quantum computer that's both scalable and fault-tolerant.
Okay, I'm really starting to understand just how groundbreaking this research is. This isn't just about making computers faster. This is about unlocking all these new possibilities in science, medicine, materials, you name it. What are some of the potential applications in other fields that have you really excited?
One area that I'm really interested in is the potential to revolutionize how we discover new drugs. Imagine being able to simulate how molecules interact at the atomic level. That could help us design drugs that are way more effective and have way fewer side effects.
Yeah, that would be a total game changer for medicine. What about areas like renewable energy or climate change? Could quantum computing help us solve some of these huge global problems?
Oh, definitely. Imagine designing solar panels that are way more efficient, or figuring out new ways to capture carbon, or even discovering entirely new materials for storing energy. The potential is enormous, and it could really help us tackle some of the biggest issues we're facing.
It really sounds like we're on the edge of a massive technological revolution, and Microsoft is leading the way with this incredibly innovative approach to quantum computing. But let's be real here. We can't ignore the potential risks that come with such a powerful technology. We've talked about the good stuff like fighting climate change and developing new medicines. But what about the potential downsides? There's been a lot of talk about quantum computers breaking encryption and causing chaos in cybersecurity. How worried should we be?
It's definitely something we need to think about quantum computers, especially if they become as big and stable as we're imagining, could potentially break a lot of the encryption algorithms that we use today to keep our data and communication secure.
So our online banking email, even national security could be at risk. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, potentially. But it's important to remember that this isn't an immediate threat. Building these large-scale, fault-tolerant quantum computers that could actually crack our current encryption is still a really big challenge. And it's probably going to take years, maybe even decades to get there.
So we have some time to get ready and adapt. What are people doing to address this potential threat?
The good news is that researchers are already working on new encryption algorithms that are specifically designed to be resistant to attacks from quantum computers. It's a race against time for sure, but I'm confident we can stay one step ahead.
That's good to hear. But aside from cybersecurity, what are some of the other ways quantum computing could impact society? How could it affect our jobs, the economy, even our way of life?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think quantum computing has the potential to be as transformative as the internet, maybe even more so. If you create completely new industries and types of jobs, new ways of solving problems that we haven't even thought of yet. Imagine a world where complex scientific simulations that used to take years can now be done in minutes, or where medicine is personalized to your unique genetic makeup.
It's like we're standing at the edge of this new frontier, full of amazing possibilities, but also some uncertainty. It's a little intimidating, but also incredibly exciting.
Exactly. And it's really important that we approach this new frontier responsibly and thoughtfully. We need to make sure that the benefits of quantum computing are shared widely and that we're carefully managing the risks.
That's a really good point. It's a call to action, not just for scientists and engineers, but for people making policies, business leaders, and just everyday people. We need to have open and honest conversations about what it means ethically to use this technology, and we need to work together to make sure it's developed and used in a way that benefits all of humanity.
I completely agree. We all have a role to play in shaping this quantum future.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot today. We've explored the basics of quantum computing. We dove into the world of topological qubits, and we even touched on how this technology could impact society. But before we move on, I want to leave you with something to think about.
I always love a good question.
So this.
What breakthroughs do you think you will see in your lifetime thanks to quantum computing? It's a question that makes us imagine the impossible, to dream of a future where things we thought were impossible become possible. And it's a question I hope you'll keep thinking about even after today.
That's a fantastic question to consider. The future of quantum computing is full of potential, and it's really up to all of us to shape that future in a way that makes the world a better place.
So let's keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep dreaming. The quantum revolution is just getting started, and the possibilities are truly endless.
I love that. Let's continue this deep dive into the world of quantum computing in the next part of our show. Until then, keep those minds curious. And remember, the future is what we make it. So let's work together to make a quantum future one that's full of innovation, progress, and hope for everyone.
It's pretty amazing when you think about how all of this ties back to that idea of topological order being like a knot. Microsoft is basically using these Majorana particles to tie these incredibly complicated quantum knots. They're using them to store information and process it in a completely new way.
It's almost like they've cracked some kind of secret code of the universe. But let's step back for a second and see how Microsoft's approach compares to other ways people are trying to build quantum computers. You mentioned companies like Google and IBM are also working on this stuff, right? How are their methods different?
Yeah, definitely. There are a bunch of different paths to building quantum computers, and each one has its pros and cons. Google and IBM, for example, are mainly focused on these superconducting transmon qubits. They're pretty easy to make and control, but they're also more susceptible to those noise and error problems that we talked about before.
So it's like a trade-off between being easy to use and being stable. What determines which approach will be the most successful in the long run?
That's a really good question. It's still pretty early in the game, and quantum computing is changing all the time. Microsoft's topological qubit approach is definitely harder from an engineering standpoint, but it has the potential to be way more stable and scalable down the road.
It's kind of like choosing between a really cool sports car and a tough work truck. Each one is better for different things. Do you think one type of quantum computer will eventually win out, or will different approaches be used for different things?
I think it's very possible that different types of quantum computers will be better at different types of problems. It's like having a toolbox. You wouldn't use a hammer for every job, right?
Yeah.
And who knows what other amazing discoveries are waiting for us. This field is always changing, and that's what makes it so cool.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's so much potential for innovation and people working together. But let's change gears for a minute and talk about some of the roadblocks in actually building this million-qubit quantum computer. What are some of the biggest obstacles that researchers are up against?
One of the toughest challenges is keeping these qubits coherent. Quantum states are super fragile. It's like trying to balance a million spinning plates all at once. As you add more qubits, it gets exponentially harder to keep them all coherent.
So it's not just about building more qubits, it's about keeping them all in sync and working together. That sounds insanely hard. What are some of the things researchers are doing to try and solve that problem?
Well, it takes really precise control over the entire quantum system, and you have to shield it from any kind of environmental noise or interference. It's like you're building a fortress around these qubits to protect them from even the smallest disturbances.
I can only imagine how much creativity and engineering goes into that. Are there certain areas of research that are specifically focused on solving that problem?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are whole teams of people working on coming up with new materials, new techniques, and even special environments to try to isolate these qubits and keep them coherent for as long as possible. It's a constant race to push the limits of what we can do.
So it's not just about the hardware, it's about making the right environment for these qubits to work in. What about the software side of things? Isn't that a challenge too?
For sure. Developing the software and algorithms that we need to program and control these quantum computers is another huge obstacle. It's basically like we're inventing a whole new way of thinking about computation. It's like learning a completely new language.
So it's not enough to just build the machine, you also have to figure out how to talk to it effectively. How are researchers approaching that?
Well, it's a huge team effort. You need physicists, computer scientists, and mathematicians all working together to create new programming languages, new tools, and new algorithms that are made specifically for the unique capabilities of quantum computers.
Speaking of working together, let's talk about Microsoft's role in the larger quantum computing world. They're not just building their own quantum computers, right? They're also teaming up with other companies and institutions. How does that fit into the bigger picture?
You're right. Microsoft has created this platform called Azure Quantum, and it gives people access to a whole bunch of quantum computing resources, including their own topological qubits, as well as other types of qubits from partners like IonQ and Quantinuum.
So it's like a central hub for everything quantum computing, a
Mm.
one-stop shop for researchers and developers.
Exactly. It lets people try out different types of quantum hardware and software without having to build their own systems, which is a big deal in a field that's still in its early stages.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes this technology available to more people and helps speed up the pace of innovation. It sounds like Microsoft is playing a really important role in bringing people together and pushing the field forward.
Definitely. And their involvement goes way beyond just giving people access to hardware. They're also putting a lot of money into developing quantum software and educating people. They're building tools and resources to make quantum computing easier for a lot more people to understand and use.
So they're basically building the foundation for a future powered by quantum computing, not just for themselves, but for everyone. But let's be realistic. We can't ignore the potential risks of this technology. We've talked about the benefits like fighting climate change and finding new cures, but what about the downsides? We've heard a lot about quantum computers being able to break encryption and wreak havoc on cybersecurity. How worried should we really be?
It's something we definitely need to be aware of. Quantum computers, especially if they get as big and as stable as we're imagining, could potentially break a lot of the encryption methods we use today to protect our data and communications.
So all of our online banking, our email, even national security could be at risk. That sounds pretty serious.
Yeah, it could be. But it's important to remember that this isn't something that's going to happen tomorrow. Building these huge fault-tolerant quantum computers that could actually crack our current encryption methods is still a really tough challenge. It's probably going to be years, if not decades, before that happens.
So we have some breathing room to figure things out and get ready. What are people doing to address this potential threat?
The good news is there are already a lot of smart people working on developing new encryption algorithms that are specifically designed to withstand attacks from quantum computers. It's a race against time, but I think we can stay ahead of the game.
Well, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
But beyond cybersecurity, what are some of the other ways quantum computing could impact society as a whole? How could it affect things like jobs and the economy, even the way we live our lives?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think quantum computing could be just as transformative as the internet was, maybe even more so. It could lead to entirely new industries and jobs. It could even change how we solve problems in ways we can't even imagine right now. Think about a world where those really complicated scientific simulations that used to take years can now be done in minutes, or a world where medicine is tailored to your specific DNA. The possibilities are pretty mind-blowing.
It's like we're standing on the edge of this brand new world full of amazing opportunities, but also a bit of uncertainty. It's a little scary, but also really exciting at the same
You
time.
got it. And it's so important that we approach this new world responsibly and thoughtfully. We need to make sure that the benefits of quantum computing are available to everyone and that we're carefully managing the risks.
That's a great point. It's a call to action, not just for scientists and engineers, but for everyone. Policymakers, business leaders, and everyday people like you and me. We need to talk openly and honestly about the ethical implications of this technology and work together to make sure it's used to benefit all of humanity.
Couldn't agree more. We all have a part to play in shaping this quantum future.
All right, I think we've explored a lot today, from the nitty-gritty science of topological qubits to the potential impact of this technology on society. But before we wrap things up, I want to bring it back to you, the listener.
I always love bringing things back to our listeners. What do you have in mind?
Well, we've talked about how quantum computing could help us tackle some of the biggest challenges facing the world, like climate change. But how could this technology impact your personal life, your health, or even your career?
That's a great question. It's easy to focus on the big picture, but ultimately, this technology is going to affect all of our lives in ways we can't even predict right now. It's a time to be curious and imagine what could be possible.
Exactly. What if quantum computers could unlock the secrets of the human brain in ways we never thought possible? What if they could help us cure diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's? Or what if they could help us create medicine that's perfectly tailored to your genes? The possibilities are really incredible.
Those are some seriously exciting possibilities. And remember, we're really just starting to explore what this technology can do. We've barely scratched the surface.
That's what makes this field so captivating. The future of quantum computing is wide open, and it's up to all of us to shape it.
I agree. As we delve deeper into this amazing new frontier, we need to keep asking questions, challenging what we think we know, and having those important conversations about how to move forward in the best way possible.
And that's exactly what the deep dive is all about. We want to give our listeners the knowledge and inspiration to be informed, engaged, and excited about the future of technology.
Well said. Let's continue this conversation in the next part of our show.
Mm.
We'll go even deeper into the world of quantum computing and how it might change our lives. Until then, keep those minds curious.
And remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create. So let's work together to create a quantum future, one that's full of innovation, progress, and hope for everyone.
You know, it's really interesting how this all comes back to that idea of topological order being like a knot. The stability of those quantum knots, those intricate structures made by those Majorana particles. It could be the key to unlocking a future where quantum computers are not only super powerful, but also reliable and, accessible to way more people.
It does feel like we're watching a whole new technological era being built like one quantum brick at a time.
Yeah.
But let's zoom out for a second and think about the bigger picture. The broader implications of this quantum revolution. We've talked about the potential good and bad that could come from it. But what about the philosophical side of things? How does quantum computing change how we understand reality information, even the very nature of the universe?
Whoa, that's a deep question. Quantum mechanics, the theory behind all of this. It's been shaking up our understanding of the world for over 100 years now. Concepts like superposition and entanglement, where particles are connected across huge distances, it really challenges how we think about cause and effect and the very fabric of reality.
It's like quantum mechanics is whispering these secrets about the universe. Secrets we're just starting to understand. And now with quantum computing, we're not just observing these strange things anymore, we're using them.
Exactly. Quantum computing takes these mind-bending ideas and turns them into a tool, a way to solve problems that were impossible before. It forces us to really confront the strangeness of the quantum world and grapple with what it all means for how we understand everything.
It's both exciting and a little unsettling at the same time, right? It's like we're peeking behind the curtain of reality and seeing something that we weren't quite ready for.
Totally. It's a powerful reminder that we're still just at the beginning of understanding the universe. And there's so many mysteries still out there waiting for us.
And quantum computing is giving us a whole new set of tools to explore those mysteries, a new way of looking at the universe.
You got it. It's like we've been handed a new language, a new way to communicate with the universe and unlock its secrets.
Okay. I think we've officially reached peak mind-blowing for one episode. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one last thought.
Always up for a good brain teaser. What do you have?
We've talked about how quantum computing could help us solve some of the biggest problems in the world, like climate change. But what if the most impactful thing about this technology is something we haven't even imagined yet? What if it leads to a whole new understanding of consciousness, of what reality really is? What if it unlocks secrets of the universe that are beyond what we can understand right now?
Those are some really interesting possibilities. It reminds us that we're on the verge of a whole new era of discovery.
Yeah.
An era that could completely change how we understand ourselves and the universe in ways we can only dream of right now.
So as we step into this unknown territory, let's do it with a sense of wonder and curiosity and with deep respect for the mysteries that are waiting for us. The quantum revolution is just starting, and there's no limit to what's possible.
That's a beautiful thought. And remember, everyone, the future isn't something that just happens. It's something we build.
Yeah.
So let's work together to create a quantum future, one that's full of innovation, progress, and hope for everyone.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into the world of Microsoft's million-qubit leap. Until next time, stay curious and keep those imaginations going.